Redditors who add on to an elaborate fantasy world story while falling asleep. What is the story? Two detectives try to solve a crime to figure out who this murderer was. But here's the cool catch. One of them, named John, finds a strange mirror that lands him 20 years in the future. Edwards is stuck in the past, aka the present of 1950. In John's time, the crime is still unsolved, and Edwards is missing. But John is finding clues left behind from the past. In Edward's time, Edward is being stalked by the murderer, very slowly, and Edwards is leaving clues for John to find one day. As of last night, Edwards fled the country and has landed in China, hoping to escape from the murderer. He's left a clue for John to find. But in the future, John finds a note saying from Edwards, claiming "I've left to Iceland." John notices the handwriting isn't like Edwards, and now has to decide if taking a trip to Iceland will cost him his life, or if he will find Edwards. Mine's lame, but I imagine my ideal future life with my current boyfriend in extreme details. Jobs, buying a house, marriage, kids, vacations. Another one I have is reenacting my current life but with more drama, like a soap opera. I wouldn't normally jump in on this, but be careful fantasizing too much about an ideal everyday life. It can potentially make it harder for you to feel content later on. The second fantasy sounds brilliant and hilarious though. I have a bunch depending on my mood. Roman Praetorian defending and usurping emperors, ruling an empire spanning over multiple solar systems, invading and dealing with diplomacy of other empires, and building the coolest secret room section of my house. If you break into my house, I'm chilling behind a fake wall in my closet with a nice couch, laughing at you through my security monitors. It's based on the premise that in a certain world, Midria, there was once a great war between the individual nation states for dominion over the continent. Midria has only one continental mass. The old Midrian arcane arts were extremely powerful, and this led to the creation of various magical super weapons, most prolifically the seeds of Ilagris, highly unstable crystallized mana that allowed a magic user to perform spells far outside their usual capability, but with a profound tendency to overload and cause the spell to go out of control if wielded by an inexperienced user. In the final days of the war, a decisive battle was waged. The mages of the armies of King Hearth of Dharmas sought to end the war with one fell blow by using forbidden transdimensional magic to hurl the entire enemy army into the dimensional sea, the theoretical space between dimensions. In a ritual that called for the use of many thousands of seeds, they lost control of the spell, and in both armies, as well as their various magic super weapons, were thrown into the void to be scattered across space and time. In the years that followed, a Knight Order, the Knights of the Hunt, was founded by the new king, who had previously ruled a small, independent nation that subsequently expanded in power in the vacuum left by the relative destruction of two continental superpowers, with exclusive permission to utilize dimensional translocation magic. Their sole reason for being was to secure them. Fast forward 1,500 years, and the knighthood has developed into something more akin to a trade guild, with expanded interdimensional services available to the common man. The main character of the story is Ulrich Mensaz III, a professional interdimensional treasure hunter, arcane scholar and merchant of transdimensional artifacts and the employee of the guild, who visits various worlds, gets into fights and generally enjoys poking his nose into places it doesn't belong alongside his apprentice Rachel, a girl he borrowed from Corwood Earth Actual, and with the support of various characters from the guild. Our world building is calling your name. Y'all are creating a whole new world in your imagination. Meanwhile, I just imagine marrying my crush. I'm at the stage we just had a new baby. I pretty much write fan fiction in my head. The ship depends on what fandom I'm into at the time, but it's almost always romantic. A lot of time I'll play out the same scene conversation in my head for days until I get it right. Haven't actually written anything down in a while, but it's a fun way to spend time before bed and transit while walking. Same here. Especially feel that repeating same scene convo part. I don't write much because it's hard to translate the ideas and feelings I get into a story that actually makes sense, but it's cool to know someone else does that too. I wake up with Wolverine claws and a healing factor, and I really don't have much of a use for either, so I wonder how I would deal with that. planning out my lottery winnings or just planning out my ideal future life. When I was little I had a boyfriend in kindergarten. I would religiously fall asleep every night imagining that we were trying to get to each other from floating rocks swirling around in hot lava. Nothing that complicated. It's two people in some state of distress bonding with each other. The two people have changed over time, although they are nearly always men. Sometimes they're from a fandom I'm enjoying at the moment. Sometimes they're from an original novel I'm writing. But the basic plot has not changed for 15 years. Two sad people who aren't really friends share feelings and become good friends. It's oddly relaxing. I put myself into the office. Right now Michael and Dwight are hazing me by fricking up my desk and Toby is my only friend. I have a few of these. A teenager finds out that their biological father is a famous musician who they've had a crush on for years. Yes, their first reaction is to throw up. Might try to write a few storylines in this one as TV show episodes. There's some interesting dynamics and comedy drama potential. A burnout 20-something becomes a powerful vampire accidentally and several vampire clans fight over who gets to recruit him. Meanwhile this guy just wants to eat vegetarian food and watch cartoons while high. The one where I run away from my abusive parents and start a new life on the other side of the country. This one never gets far because I end up crying when I realize it isn't possible and will never happen. SBURB session. But I'm in it. My brain has always liked dystopian brainscapes. For lack of a better word. Doomsday scenarios and prepping and looting or designing and stocking a bunker and deciding who was in it and why. It might be a Fallout Vault style scenario, could be a Hunger Games District 12 style scenario, or Lost as frick in the woods and have to survive has always been a go-to since I was very young. What items do I have on me? How would I use them? What would my camp or cave or refuge look like? Would I hunt or fish or trap or scavenge? Is it the woods, an island, or mountains? It just depends on my mood, but it's always very elaborate down to the detail until I fall asleep. Sometimes I stick to the same thing the next night or go on to something different. My brother and I would stay up late as kids and imagine scenarios like this. What would we cook? We'd try to keep track of supplies. Imagine building a huge base camp with cozy little defenses and collect more survivors to grow our power. It was so much fun. Okay, it is not a story but an elaborate hypothesis that I've been working upon for quite some time. It assumes that every phonetic sound that exists has evolved from either S or R sounds. For example, K is similar to G is similar to J is similar to Z is similar to S. Simultaneously, N is similar to L is similar to R. Now, it works better in Hindi language, my mother tongue being Hindi. What I do is I find words and dissolve every word into its basic form, which is made of S and R, and do it until I fall asleep. It is weird as heck, but it is a nice alternative to counting sheeps. Well, this is actually pretty dang interesting. Whoa, I really didn't realize other people did this. Been building on different stories since I was a preteen. Started off as stories about different underdog superhero characters that were loosely based on myself. Definitely a coping mechanism. But now I've got 4-ish different stories of multiple characters that are mostly sci-fi based with aliens and adventure. Last few years I've actually begun attempting to write them. I've got mood boards on Pinterest, full outlines, world building, and pages of writing from various scenes that are my favorites. But I'm way too self-conscious to give more details about the stories, let alone let anyone actually read my writing. My husband doesn't even know what I write about sometimes before bed other than, it's multiple books, most with aliens, different characters and multiple main characters. So, to sum up, I fall asleep replaying and adjusting scenes with characters I've created, in situations that are either critical to their story, or where they are doing something heroic. Some time is also spent thinking about world building and plot or solving plot holes. Then, sometimes, I write it all down. This is kinda lame, but here goes. Mine is about a humanoid anomaly contained by the SCP Foundation. His anomaly is akin to your standard telepathy. However, he can't easily read or communicate ideas and is better at psionic combat, as he later discovers. The story begins with him being contained. He spends months in temporary containment, transferred to a proper humanoid wing pushed back over and over due to bureaucracy. When he's finally moved, He spends some time in containment until being temporarily given supervised freedom under an experimental program, until one of the others makes a break for it and vanishes. The protagonist is moved to a proper low-risk humanoid containment wing, with a common area so all the humanoids can interact, under the Foundation's close supervision, of course. He befriends a female anomaly. She has a sort of psychological camouflage ability. She can make people wholly convinced that one object is another while still being fully aware of its trace. They'll look in the room and say that's a cat, but still be fully aware that the object is made of wood, has a cushion on it, and does not have fur or paws. The two characters fall in love because that's what happens in lame stories, and then during a large containment breach they, along with a bunch of their friends from humanoid containment, escape. Now they're on the run from the Foundation, moving from place to place trying to avoid detection and get in contact with the Serpent's Hand. Nearly all of them have been in containment since their mid-teens, and have had minimal knowledge of the outside world since then. Now they are running from a nearly omnipresent enemy with effectively infinite resources, in a world few of them really know anything about, aiming for a far-off destination that they know they may never reach. Redacted. Oh boy, I have never talked about this with anyone. It's set in the future. Space exploration is a thing and there are different alien species living on many different planets. A lot like Star Trek. There's an alien race that has teamed up with a non-biological alien race that wants to take down the Federation and have been waging war for a long time. There's an elite team of soldiers comprised of 5 people. The main character is a guy who reluctantly joined the Federation after years of them trying to recruit him, since his father was one of the best soldiers they had seen before he was killed in a self-sacrifice. He was a vigilante of sorts and avoided Federation recruitment because he didn't trust their regulations and rules. Another member is a girl who was created through genetic modification. She's supposed to be a perfect soldier, but is actually quite rebellious. The girl, unknown to her at first, has an affinity to an energy source. Both sides in the war are trying to get into possession of this strange energy source because it would win the war. Because during her development she was basically given the spark of life from this energy source in a freak accident. Eventually the energy source is found, and in another accident, she absorbs all the energy and has to learn how to work it and control it. The non-biological alien race has connection to the energy and a few non-violent members of the race assist her in learning to work with it. In a twist, the team learns that the 2 alien races waging war in the Federation are incredibly corrupt, and in order to end the war they have to take both sides down. In the end they do. A crap ton of people die, and the main character and the girl live out the rest of their life on an uninhabited planet guarding the energy. There's so much more detail. I've been building this story for like 6 years. It's my biggest kept secret and I'm most likely going to delete this comment. I also have a Wild West love story about a girl who runs away from her mom after her father dies, but I'm not going into that. What an incredible world and narrative. Bravo. It's basically a combination of every fictional universe I've been invested in: movies, TV, video games, books, comics, etc. There are tons of characters, an overarching story with a beginning and an end, and it's even got to the point where there are side stories and an epilogue. Every night I basically think of a backstory for a character or an event that happens in the middle of the story. The long story short is, if I had any writing or drawing ability, I'm sitting on 15 years of a story where most major plot points have huge payoffs. And yes, I've had many nights where this story has kept me up. It's usually medieval fantasy based. The characters are usually the same, but the story is drastically different most every single night, although somehow connected. The other night it was about this prince's parents finding their son a concubine. Thanks for the idea, historical dramas. I was for real half asleep when that one happened and I was so confused. LMAO. I actually wrote out a few of them. I had no idea other people did this. I rotate a few scenarios, but my favorite is what I call the How I Met Your Mother game. I pick someone in my life I'm really enjoying and I pretend I'm telling someone else, my mom, Oprah, etc, etc, etc. I recount our best moments and imagine zany future adventures, and usually by then I'm asleep. Haha. There was one time where it was a 28 weeks later zombie scenario, and instead of all the drama in the movies, I just imagine myself in a cozy bunker with literally everything I need to go almost forever inside with a significant other. And we don't do stupid stuff like open the vault door for anyone or anything and just laze the days away. I am so happy that other people do this. I'm not sure why I thought I was the only one. Anyway, it's something along the lines of a small percentage of humans have alien DNA that gets activated for reasons. The alien DNA comes from the royal court that fled their dying planet along with their biomechanical servants. A long time ago, before life began on Earth, they landed here and built a new society. Unfortunately, the new society winds up failing. The servants, who could potentially last forever, hide tech from their new world, while the aliens give themselves to our planet, eventually triggering life as we know it. In present day, the servants activate and bring the tech to light. This also triggers the awakening of those who have the purest of the royal court's DNA, thereby making those people the rulers of Earth. As you can imagine, it doesn't go over well with most people in power. Been dreaming up this story for about a year now. Wait, there are other people who do this. I'm not alone. Right now my story is recreation of life of a pro wrestler. I'm a fighter pilot but ace combat style. I carry like 80 missiles in my stealth fighter and I'm the best pilot to ever walk the earth, but I did run into that one guy one time who was a close match. I used to call it playing in the blankets. It sounds dirty now, but I made the term to explain to people what I was doing when I was literally just lying in bed wiggling my legs around. I came up with all kinds of stories just laying in bed starting as early as I can remember. It's been a while, and I'm sad I don't think as fantastical as I used to. I feel like aging has put more reality in my head and taken away the fantasy. However, I did have long running stories about Superstar It Was Me, and I was a Sailor Moon-esque superhero from space who fought with my other stars, who were all my friends. We were at constant war in the great battle called the Melted Ice Cream, which was a gendered boy versus girl war. That was ages 9-15. In high school there were always epic stories of being trapped on an island with crushes I had. As I get older I enjoy thinking about being a really cozy animal just huddling up in a warm spot as I fall asleep, or lying in the grass under a tree, that kind of stuff. When you die you respawn on basically Earth 2 and this goes on and on and on, and the idea is that every single person that has died in history has been reborn. The caveat of being reborn in Earth 2 and beyond is that one cannot die of natural causes. You simply stop aging but somehow can turn back your own age. Convenient as frick, I know. Basically if you died at 90 you can turn into your own version of yourself. The problem is that since everyone human who dies is reincarnated and Earth is still the same geography wise, Earths are ruled by different empires and kidnap those who recently die since they are in a way men of the future with their knowledge regarding new technology. Groups that discover reincarnation as a thing begin a race to secure their own version of Earth in what you would call mass suicide, since every death brings you to a new Earth, 3, 4, 5, etc. So there's Earth ruled by different people to some degree or just vast wasteland. In this story for some unknown reason main character can travel up the ladder of worlds. 3 is greater than 2, and some other people too, but for some reason not world 1, which would be here. Some of the other people work for organizations that want to somehow control multiple Earths at the same time. Overreaching empire, and they use these jumpers per se to communicate, making them messengers for these orgs. Convoluted as frick, I know, but maybe someday something like this will come on TV. The closest thing I have seen is Reverworld, I presume. I'm the leader of a band of scamps in a fascist robot alien dystopia, and we're trying to save as many people as possible. We have a big network of tunnels that people live in. For every 10 or so bedrooms there's a common room with a kitchen, TV, couches, etc. But there's one biggest dining room where I call everyone together to make important announcements sometimes. The robots have a network in each city that connects all the buildings together like veins, so the robots in any given city act as a hive mind. The tallest building in every city has a control center in it that you can dismantle to take the city back, so me and the scamps just go from city to city destroying the robots. For every city we destroy we pick a high quality team of dudes from our hideout who have been trained in the ways of modern defense and politics to take control of the freed city. So far we're about 3/4 down the east coast, but we also got Syracuse in Italy just for the heck of it because one of my bros lives there and I wanted to save him. I wake all at once. Alert but not alarmed. I automatically reach my hand out to the wall that curves up and over my bed. Finding the spot in the paint worn smooth and bare to the metal in places. I rest my palm there and splay out my fingers, listening with ears and fingertips. The silence had taken so long to get used to until I realized it wasn't silence but only the absence of voices. The sounds that remained became my ally, telling me everything I needed to know. The diminishing roar of the engine and a barely perceptible thrum under my hand says I've reached the outermost nav beacon. I swing my legs over the edge of my bunk. Time to go to work. This is super crazy and I never thought anyone else really did this. But I have a super elaborate universe and timeline set out in my head that had been progressing since I was very young. Maybe like 7 or 8. I'm 19 now. The amount of things and characters that have just been created is crazy. I would write it all out but you'd probably get the last Song of Ice and Fire book out before I was finished. Not falling asleep, but I daydream constantly of being a superhero in a universe filled with places, characters, and things that I have taken from numerous types of media. I daydream of UGR, occasionally random stuff, and about my past life, specifically about my ex and such. It's really lame, but I dream about being truly loved and cared about in a non-romantic way, just lots of hugs, and love and support. This probably says a lot about some deep-seated issues I have, especially since once I fall asleep the dreams devolve into a nightmare rather consistently. I don't know man. Life. I have an actual cabin I built in the woods. A lot of times before I go to sleep I imagine I'm there doing projects. I've dug root cellars and wells, constructed stone walls and even made a spring house. Although the outdoor kitchen that started as part of the sleep fantasy I actually got around to building. I continue on the fantasy that the woman I am in love with and myself are actually together. I fantasize about many different scenarios that may possibly happen. I do this during most of my downtime, driving to work, anywhere, falling asleep, and just generally whenever I get a few moments to myself. I surely can't be the only person who does this, yet I still feel alone. Might have something to do with the fact I'm deeply in love with someone who may not feel exactly the same as me. Or is it true, I am alone? Boy, have I been waiting for this AskReddit all my life. My story for the last couple years has been an urban fantasies that I would love to muster the motivation to turn into some webcomic or novel, but alas I don't have the time. The story is in the world that is coming out of a 2-decade war ravaged the world. The story itself is in a large Baltimore, Annapolis, Richmond metropolitan area. The story follows 3 young recruits into a type of peacekeeping organization and the other 3 mentors which had trained their life for this war which is now over. So the story is really about finding you on purpose in a confusing world after you finally accomplished your greatest goal. Whoa, I didn't realize that thousands of people do this. Hahaha. Mine is super cringe-worthy, but I've had an ongoing story since I was like 12 or 13 that I'm a famous singer-actress. Obviously those daydreams were a lot more elaborate back at that age, but I still tend to drift off thinking about what movie she's filming or award show my celebrity alter ego is making an appearance at. I always thought it was really weird that I had this 20-year nightly daydream. Had no idea other people did the same thing. Thanks for asking. I know I'm really late, but whatever. Since first grade I have had an ever-evolving universe that I go to sleep to. It started off being basically inspired by Power Rangers, where I would imagine me and my friends fighting with powers. It has now turned into a universe that is a mix of Star Wars and Avatar: The Last Airbender. Basically the universe is in never-ending war. Each person I know in real life is a character in the universe with varying importance and power. I have a number of different storylines I can choose from. Sometimes me and the characters are having face-to-face battles with swords and bending powers. Or sometimes there are large land battles with futuristic tanks and blasters. I can either be a powerful Avatar general or a foot soldier. Also, space battles. There are Theseus massive space pencil ships that can carry a dozen 100 feet tanks. There are also slightly smaller ships shaped like a pen. These are meant to destroy the pencil ships. One of the ways the characters will capture another character, the powerful characters are invincible, is by sending elite units with cool equipment like projectile Wolverine claw fingers. In one storyline is where I am a very powerful bender who is an assassin. By far my favorite is the 3-person mech suit that can transform into a small space fighter. These are cool because you can do all sorts of covered missions with these. Anyway, thanks for reading. I start over each time, but I like to imagine I'm in a post-apocalyptic world. The reason for the apocalypse changes each time, but I'm found by a group of travelers that guide me to their safe house and we meet challenges along the way and the such. It sounds silly and not very structured, but it makes me feel comfortable. Although I don't do this as much anymore, but when I was about 9 I developed a massive, multi-installment story arc about a young Viking warrior and his many adventures. I don't remember many of the details, but each installment would take the hero on a separate adventure with progressively more involved storylines and character arcs, involving gods, monsters, curses and other things. Each installment adventure would take me several weeks to get through. One of the few details I specifically remember is that right after learning about Leif Erikson in class, I decided the hero to the Americas, along with his companion the god Thor. The hero adventured around the continent and eventually made his way to Central America and became involved in an intertribal war involving IIRC, the Aztecs and some unnamed adversary. The hero was near death when he was saved by Thor, who came to his aid in a flying longboat. I would work on this story at night before sleeping, but also pretty much whenever I had downtime or got bored. I got a reputation in elementary school for being that kid that walks around a tree all recess because I would just pace and add to my story instead of playing with other kids. This also proved to be fantastic for my parents because whenever we had to go anywhere, I would just zone out completely and keep myself totally entertained for the whole trip. Mine is super weird BC. I always think, hey, no one's gonna see it or hear about it anyways, so what's the point in making it rational? It's basically a soap opera, but everyone has some sort of trauma or experiences some major fricked up crap. So all the characters are severely traumatized or drug addicts, and then there's love triangles and all that usual soap stuff as well. Over the years I've created superheroes, so when I'm falling asleep I'll think up stories about them. Glad to see I'm not the only one who does this. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.